hogs are wreaking havoc across Georgia, tearing up farmland, spreading disease, and outsmarting hunters.
Now, a new state program is rewarding people who go whole hog in fighting back.
Wild boars cause an estimated $1.5 billion in damage each year to crops, livestock, and the environment in the United States. These destructive animals are not game species, but rather invasive pests that farmers desperately need to control. In fact, Texas farmers and ranchers alone lose approximately $119 million annually to feral hog damage. Today, farmers who've been battling these destructive animals for years finally cracked the code, and the way they're pulling it off is nothing short of genius. How did that happen? Stick around. You'll want to witness this till the very end. Farmers dig ditches to block wild boar invasions. For decades, farmers in different parts of the world tried almost everything to stop wild boars from destroying their hard work. And yet the animals always seem to find a way through. After countless experiments with electric fences, steel traps, and other modern tools, many of them are now turning back to a method that sounds surprisingly simple: digging trenches around their fields. It is almost ironic, isn't it? After years of investing in high-tech systems, the answer lies in an old, straightforward technique that had been used long ago. People began to wonder, almost in disbelief, how far these animals could go. If they were clever enough to outsmart traps, fast enough to dodge hunters, and bold enough to invade farms without hesitation, then what on earth could finally bring them to a halt? The surprising truth isn't found in brute force, but in an ingenious twist of human creativity, one that these animals, for all their instincts, simply cannot outwit. And trust me, you'll want to see how it unfolds, because what happens next is nothing short of brilliant. The problem with traditional fences and traps was always the same. They demanded constant attention and were far too easy for wild boars to outsmart. Farmers complained that electric fences needed daily inspection, as even the smallest gap or faulty wire would be enough for boars to push through. Others pointed out that human mistakes, such as mismatched fence types or poor maintenance, made the barriers weak from the start. Steel cage traps, on the other hand, were supposed to be one of the best solutions, yet they often backfired. Why? Because people would trigger them too soon, catching just a few animals. The rest of the sounder, the tight-knit group that wild boars travel in, would learn from the experience and avoid the traps altogether. Did this really solve the problem? Not at all. In many cases, fencing only shifted the destruction to another field that was less protected. The core issue remained untouched. Farmers realized that no matter how much money they poured into modern systems, the boars always adapted. They became more nocturnal, more cautious, and sometimes even bolder. And what could a farmer do when a storm knocked out the electricity, or when a determined boar simply crashed through the barrier? This is where trenches come into play. Unlike fences that require power, upkeep, and endless monitoring, trenches act as natural barriers that the boars cannot easily cross. The idea is simple enough. Dig a ditch between 1 and 1.5 meters deep around a field, and the problem is practically solved. Wild boars, by nature, are not animals that leap over obstacles unless they are forced to. They usually try to go through things instead. When they come across a trench, they face an obstacle that cannot be pushed aside or broken down. If they try to jump, they usually fail. If they fall in, they struggle to climb back out. Suddenly, the farmers have an advantage. It is not about tricking the animal or outsmarting it with technology, but about using its natural limitations against it. Isn't it interesting how such a plain and physical solution can succeed where complicated machines fail? In Brazil, this method has already proven itself in dramatic ways. Farmers there, especially in regions where crops like corn, soybeans, beans, cassava, and sugarcane dominate the land, were losing entire fields in a single night. Some reported financial losses so high that they reached into the thousands of Brazilian reais, all because herds of wild boars swept through their plantations like an unstoppable wave. In Sao Paulo, the problem grew even worse. with herds numbering over 200 animals moving together and destroying anything in their path. One farmer in Santana do Livramento reported that up to half of his lambs were being taken, with losses reaching about 250 lambs in one season alone. How could anyone continue farming under such conditions without finding a lasting solution? Texas, too, has seen just how destructive these animals can be. Landowners there face yearly damages estimated at around $119 million, with the state itself spending over $52 million annually just trying to control the boar population. Farmers reached a point where they realized that the old methods were draining their resources without giving them peace of mind. The choice became clear: either continue spending endlessly on electric fences, traps, and manpower, or invest in something that could hold up on its own without constant supervision. Many chose the latter, turning to ditches. Of course, there was still an upfront cost. Heavy machinery, skilled workers, and fuel were required to dig trenches wide and deep enough to work. But when weighed against the yearly devastation, the cost made sense. Farmers began to say that while trenches might demand effort in the beginning, they ended up saving time, money, and crops in the long run. In the end, the return to trenches is not only a story about farming, but also a reminder of how humans sometimes complicate things unnecessarily. People spent years believing that advanced technology was the only answer, yet the real solution was lying beneath their feet all along. It makes one wonder, doesn't it? How many other old, forgotten techniques might still have the power to solve today's toughest problems? Farmers across Brazil, Texas, and beyond now tell the same story. Trenches work, they last, and they don't need the constant babysitting that electric fences or traps demand. What once looked like a relic of the past has quietly become one of the most trusted defenses of today. But here's where things take an even more fascinating turn. Before the wild boars are ever caught, farmers have learned to outsmart them in ways that border on psychological warfare. Stay with me till the very end, because this next method is both surprising and unbelievably effective. Traps and feeders. Condition boars before capture. Farmers who have long battled the damage caused by wild boars have learned that while physical barriers can help to keep these destructive animals out, the real solution lies in removing the existing populations. And how exactly do they do that? The answer is a combination of strategic baiting and carefully designed trapping systems that use the very instincts and behaviors of these animals against them. It has been said that trapping wild pigs successfully begins not with the trap itself, but with understanding the psychology of the animal. Farmers first focus on setting up bait sites near the areas where pigs rest during the day, carefully choosing spots where the scent of food can drift with the wind toward the animals' hiding places. The goal in this first stage is not to capture them right away, but to build trust and create a predictable feeding routine. After all, wouldn't it make sense to let the animals believe that food is safe and always available before springing a trap? Baiting strategies themselves often depend on the local environment, but one common approach involves the use of dry corn. To make it more attractive, farmers sometimes add what they call sour mash, which is simply corn mixed with things like strawberry or grape, Jell-O powder, and yeast. Over time, this mixture ferments and releases a strong aroma that wild boars find irresistible, but humans usually find foul. The interesting part is that this bait is not just about taste, but also about scent, which plays a big role in drawing pigs from a distance. Farmers have also discovered that the placement of the bait matters just as much as the bait itself. They may dig narrow, deep holes with post-hole diggers and fill them with corn, or they may bury small amounts in loose soil so that pigs are forced to root around for it. In other cases, barrels with small holes are filled so that only one pig can feed at a time. Each of these tactics has the same goal: to create competition, extend feeding time, and give pigs a reason to return regularly, often bringing their whole group along. And doesn't it make sense that when animals believe food is scarce or requires effort to get, they keep coming back to secure their share? But baiting alone does not tell the whole story. To truly outsmart wild boars, farmers have turned to technology in the form of trail cameras. These cameras, quietly watching day and night, provide crucial insights into pig behavior. By recording the size of the groups, the number of animals, and even the habits of certain individuals, farmers can plan more effectively. One could almost compare it to gathering intelligence before making a move. For example, a large group might require a corral trap with 6 or 7 panels to hold them, while a lone boar might only need 3 panels. Camera footage also reveals which pigs are cautious, the ones that refuse to enter a trap easily, allowing farmers to come up with special strategies for those tricky cases. Timing, too, is revealed through the cameras. Farmers often wait until the whole group, called a sounder, is regularly entering the trap during pre-baiting, before setting the actual trigger. This patience is critical because if even one pig escapes or avoids the trap, the others learn quickly and become much harder to catch in the future. After all, what would be the point of catching only a handful if the rest become even more careful and elusive? Then comes perhaps the biggest leap forward in wild boar control: remote-triggered traps. With the help of systems like Boarbuster, Big Pig Trap, and Hog Trap Trigger, farmers can now decide the exact moment to close the trap no matter where they are, as long as they have internet access. This innovation has made what is called whole sounder removal possible. Unlike older methods that caught less than half of the pigs in an area, this approach often captures nearly 9 out of 10 animals at once. The process is straightforward, but highly strategic. First, farmers identify the group with the help of cameras. Then they condition them to feel safe entering the trap. And finally, they trigger the door only when the entire group is inside. Some of these systems close in less than a second, leaving little chance for any pig to escape. Isn't it remarkable how human patience and technology can combine to outsmart animals known for their intelligence? Of course, not every pig falls for the plan. Some individuals, often called trap-shy, refuse to enter no matter how long the conditioning lasts. In such cases, farmers adapt by setting up bait sites nearby and dealing with those particular pigs through other means, sometimes even shooting them if needed. This flexibility ensures that no part of the group is left behind to breed and rebuild the population. And it shows just how much farmers must stay one step ahead, since feral swine are clever enough to learn and avoid danger once they have been exposed to it. In the end, the story of baiting and trapping wild boars is one of patience, strategy, and adaptation. Farmers do not simply rely on one method, but weave together knowledge of animal behavior, the power of scent, careful placement, modern surveillance, and advanced technology to protect their land and livelihoods. One could say it's a battle of wits. Raw human determination against centuries of wild animal instinct, and for once, it feels like the tide is finally beginning to turn. Farmers, long at the mercy of clever and destructive boars, are discovering tactics that seem almost out of a spy thriller. And if you think the story ends with traps and fences, you're in for a surprise. Because the real twist begins under cover of darkness, where cutting-edge technology meets primal survival. Stay with me till the very end, because this is where it gets wild. Night hunting with infrared targets. Elusive boars. He explained that as hunting pressure continues to grow across farming regions, wild boars have learned to change their habits in order to survive. They have shifted to becoming even more active at night, a time when they feel safer from people. Farmers, in response, have been forced to adapt as well, turning to advanced technology so they can deal with these animals after dark. They use tools like thermal imaging and specialized rifles to track and remove the boars that cause so much destruction to crops. But why exactly do these animals prefer the cover of night? He pointed out that although wild boars are naturally inclined to be nocturnal, human disturbance pushes them to make the night their almost exclusive territory. In places where hunting pressure is heavy, people notice that the boars stay hidden during daylight, resting as soon as the sun rises, only to stir again late in the afternoon and move more boldly once the darkness sets in. He shared that wild boars actually remain mostly nocturnal throughout the year, with their highest activity usually seen around midnight. During the summer, this pattern becomes even stronger because of the heat. Since hogs do not have sweat glands, they cannot handle high daytime temperatures, so they naturally switch to feeding at night when it is cooler. One might ask, does the moon play any role in all of this? According to studies, yes, it does. On nights when the moon is at its brightest, wild boars actually reduce their movement, almost as if they understand that too much light makes them easier to spot by both predators and hunters. It is as though these animals know that the darker the night, the better their chances of staying undetected. He mentioned that hunters who pursue these boars after dark rely heavily on technology, with thermal scopes being the most effective tool. Unlike night vision, which depends on amplifying whatever light is available, thermal scopes detect heat given off by animals and objects, making them useful even in complete darkness. He described how modern devices such as the Pulsar Trail 2 LRFX P50 or the TIO R4 are capable of working for long stretches, sometimes up to 16 hours, without needing a recharge. Hunters say these tools can pick out a wild hog from more than 400 yards away, even though the actual shooting usually happens at much closer ranges of about 100 to 125 yards. He observed that most farmers and professional hunters prefer AR-style rifles chambered in rounds like the 6.8 SPC, which allow quick follow-up shots when the targets move fast. When paired with suppressors, these weapons are quieter, helping hunters avoid disturbing nearby homes. But how do hunters know when and where to strike? He explained that coordination with landowners is crucial. Many farmers set up game cameras to track hog activity or spend time watching patterns themselves. Once they see regular night activity, they call hunters to act. In many states, laws have adjusted to support these practices, allowing year-round seasons for feral hogs, and even giving hunters permission to operate 24 hours a day. Still, the rules are not the same everywhere. Some states only allow thermal equipment at certain times of the year or for specific animals, which means that hunters need to stay informed about local regulations before heading out. He stressed that this strategic kind of night hunting often delivers the results that traditional methods cannot. While traps and daytime hunts may catch a few animals, the more cautious and experienced hogs quickly learn how to avoid them. Night hunting, on the other hand, takes away that advantage. It allows hunters to target the most destructive animals exactly when they feel the most secure, under the cover of night. And is that not the irony of it all? The very darkness the boars once trusted as their shield has now turned against them, transforming nightfall into a stage where their every move is exposed. What was once instinctive safety has become their greatest trap. And for farmers and hunters, this isn't just clever strategy, it's survival. By blending ancient knowledge with modern tools, they've found a way to outsmart animals that never stop adapting. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. The real game isn't just played at night. Stay with me, because seasonal strategies change everything. Seasonal strategies adapt to boar behavior. Farmers who have been in the business for years often say that dealing with wild boars is never a one-size-fits-all job. They explain that these animals change their habits with the seasons, and if someone truly wanted to control their numbers, they had to change their methods too. After all, isn't it obvious that a creature that eats, moves, and behaves differently, depending on the time of year, won't fall for the same trick twice? They believed that this kind of seasonal adaptability was what separated farmers who only kept damage to a minimum from those who actually managed to clear their land of entire groups of pigs. They pointed out that winter, stretching from late December to late March, was usually the golden window for trapping. During those cold months, hogs burned through more energy just to stay warm, and the natural food they depended on, acorns, hickory nuts, and other forest treats, ran scarce. This made the animals desperate, and desperation, as the farmers often said, was a trapper's best friend. Whole sounders, which meant entire family groups of hogs, would start returning to bait sites with remarkable predictability. And wasn't it interesting how hunger stripped even the smartest animal of caution? Farmers claimed that with the right setup, a well-executed trapping system in winter could remove up to 70 to 80% of the pigs on a property in as little as 3 months. They usually caught juveniles, subadults, nursing mothers, and even pregnant females, which meant that future litters were cut off before they ever saw daylight. But then came spring, from March to May, and everything shifted. Farmers said that the season of growth was also the season of plenty for hogs. With row crops going into the ground and fresh food like frogs, snakes, and toads waking up from hibernation, traps suddenly lost their appeal. Why would a pig bother with bait when nature was serving a buffet? That was when many turned to night shooting as their go-to strategy. They explained that thermal imaging technology gave them an edge, especially under cover of darkness, when hogs became bold. This method usually targeted the large dominant boars and bachelor groups that had been smart enough to avoid the winter traps. Wasn't it ironic, they often asked, that the very animals clever enough to survive the first round became the most destructive during spring planting? By this stage, farmers often managed to cut down another 10 to 20% of the hog population. By summer, from June through August, the game became even trickier. The hogs that were still alive had already proved their intelligence. Farmers liked to describe these survivors as the smartest of the lot, the ones that had somehow learned from failed capture attempts. These weren't pigs that stumbled into traps blindly. Instead, they were creatures that moved cautiously and relied on instinct, sharpened by experience. Farmers explained that during the scorching summer months, water became the hog's greatest weakness. Since pigs could not sweat, they had no choice but to visit water sources, wallows, and mud holes. If someone wanted to find the survivors, that was where they would be. To track them, hunters set up as many as 10 to 15 high-definition cameras for every 250 acres of land, building patterns and learning routines. And really, wasn't that proof that patience was often more powerful than aggression in the long run? Then there was fall, stretching from September through November, which they described as a season of unpredictability. It demanded both flexibility and quick thinking. During these months, farmers used what they called hybrid methods, blending strategies depending on how conditions shifted. Why? Because fall was when crops matured and mast began to drop, luring hogs into places they might have avoided in other seasons. Add to that the pressure of deer hunters on neighboring properties, which often drove fresh sounders into farmland, and suddenly, the battle wasn't just with survivors, but with newcomers too. Farmers explained that wild boars could migrate as far as 19 miles in search of food, and that meant new groups could show up overnight. To stay ahead, farmers had to be ready to switch approaches at a moment's notice. At the end of the day, the lesson they kept repeating was that managing wild boars was not a matter of brute strength or single tactics. It was about reading the land, the seasons, and the animals themselves. After all, wasn't it true that survival in farming, just like in hunting, came down to who adapted the fastest? Those who clung too tightly to old habits often found themselves with empty fields, while those who adapted learned that survival was never about one battle, but about patience, timing, and resilience across the seasons. That lesson wasn't just about crops, it was about life, and about realizing that real victories are never quick wins. And just when it seemed like the hog problem was finally solved, a deeper truth emerged. No farmer could fight alone. That's where the power of working together comes in. So stay with me, because this next part will surprise you. Community coordination prevents reinfestation. He explained that successful wild boar control was not something a single farmer or landowner could tackle alone. It extended far beyond one farm's fences or boundaries, reaching across neighboring properties and even into county and state jurisdictions. He noted that it was not enough for one person to set traps or install cameras if the land next door remained unprotected. Why? Because, as he put it, wild boars were like water, always finding a way to flow into any available space. He said neighbors had to work together if they truly wanted to see results. After all, What good was it if one property became hog-free, only for the herd to move straight into the next piece of land? He compared it to a chain where every link mattered, and he asked, almost rhetorically, what use was the strongest link if the one beside it broke? He pointed out that this idea was not just a theory, but something proven in real life. He spoke about how, in 2016, a group of landowners took part in the Integrated Wild Pig Control Program and saw success because they decided to act collectively. Each property owner purchased their own trap, camera, and gate system, and instead of working alone, they worked side by side. By doing so, they were not just protecting themselves, but creating a barrier across the community. He asked listeners to imagine what would have happened if only one or two of them had tried. Would the hogs not simply have migrated to the others and continued to multiply? The lesson, he stressed, was that unity made all the difference. As he continued, he explained just how clever and mobile these animals could be. When hog numbers grew too large in one area, they did not just stay put, they moved on. If resources ran short or hunting pressure increased, they relocated to more favorable land. He said trail camera footage had shown clear evidence of this, with the same group of hogs showing up in one location on a Monday night and then appearing 2 miles away only a few days later. It left one wondering, how could any farmer feel safe if his neighbor's land was still open to them? He also noted that if one property owner successfully discouraged hogs, the animals often marched straight onto another farm, public land, or even wooded river bottoms where they could hide and regroup. Without cooperation, he explained, it became a cycle. The hogs retreated, rebuilt their numbers, and returned just as strong as before. He went on to say that this was why experts had long called for county-wide and even statewide control efforts. He gave examples, pointing to Illinois, where the collaborative feral swine management task force had been able to remove 95% of the feral swine population in the southern region. Did that not show what coordinated action could achieve? He also mentioned Kansas, where authorities eliminated 10 separate hog populations by refusing to treat the issue as isolated incidents and instead addressing it together. He explained that these successes were not random. They were the result of cooperation between agencies and landowners, with everyone understanding their role in a larger system. He then brought up another important point: transportation bans. He said that without strict rules preventing the movement of hogs, artificial spread became a problem, with animals being relocated, sometimes even intentionally. He explained that this only made the challenge harder, but that many states had begun to act by tightening regulations. He asked the question many were already thinking: how could local victories matter if new hogs were constantly being moved in from elsewhere? Finally, he reminded everyone that this was not only a local or even a state concern. Across North America, cooperation had shown real results. He cited the joint efforts between the United States and Canada as proof that cross-border collaboration was possible and effective. He said it showed that the fight against wild boars was not limited by borders, property lines, or jurisdictions, but depended entirely on people's willingness to work together. And with that, he circled back to his first point. Wild boar control was bigger than any one farm, any one property, or any one county. It was a shared challenge, and only through shared action could it ever truly be solved. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.